Look through the papers this morning. We're joined today by the Mirror's royal editor, Russell Myers, and the founder of the Crown Chronicles, Victoria Howard. Good to see you both this morning. Can we kick off, Russell, with the Sunday Telegraph, looking at what we think Prince Philip would have thought of the funeral yesterday?
Yes, indeed, Stephen. Well, I love this assessment by Gordon Rayner, their associate editor, former royal correspondent himself. So he knows exactly what he's talking about. And it's under the headline, "Stripped Back and Subdued, just as he would have wished." And just the first couple of opening paragraphs tell you an awful lot about the ceremony and what sort of day it was. He says, "For a man like no other, it was a funeral like no other, from the Land Rover that carried his coffin to the sounding of action stations as he was lowered into the crypt. There was no mistaking the Duke of Edinburgh's hand in every detail." And of course, this was a funeral like no other. It had been completely changed from the long-held plans that the Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen had made over many, many years. And that's obviously because of the coronavirus restrictions that were in place yesterday. Just 30 mourners allowed in the Gothic St George's Chapel, where we would have probably expected about 800. But just little quirky details like the Land Rover that Gordon mentions there were a symbol of the Duke's involvement. He'd spent 16 years designing and conceptualising this Land Rover with the team at the company to carry his coffin. And what it started off as a joke back in the 1980s when he was first planning his funeral, and he just said to the Queen, "Listen, just chuck me in the back of a Land Rover and be done with it." And it wasn't that sort of affair yesterday. It had a lot of ceremony to it, but again, not this huge funeral that one would have expected. And I think that ultimately the Duke of Edinburgh probably would have wanted that. He was a man who didn't want any fuss, and it was still a fitting occasion to send off a remarkable life lived.
And do you know what? There was something I think nicer about it, Victoria, wasn't there? I mean, to hear 4 of the Queen's 6 singing so beautifully, and I mean, it was quite wonderful, wasn't it?
It was, and I think most people kind of appreciated it was a relatively short service, but it was fitting. It really suited the Prince Consort that had been at the Queen's side for over 70 years, and those personal touches really kind of stand out and make things personal, because I think sometimes we do forget the humanity of the royal family. You know, they are just like us, but in a very unique situation.
Victoria, let's have a look at the Sun on Sunday, should we? See what Arthur Edwards is having to say about it all.
Yeah, so Arthur Edwards has penned a piece for the Sun, of course, and he discusses his position on the day. So quite interestingly, as you can see from the image there, he's actually hidden inside kind of a fake pillar to take some photos for the occasion. Arthur Edwards has been a Sun photographer for 44 years, and he discusses how, obviously being so up close to the event, he thought Prince Charles looked broken. He noticed how William and Harry didn't even glance at one another during that processional walk. And I think this is really interesting because he's been following them for so long, literally so close to them, that it gives him a kind of a unique perspective. And that touch as well with the pillar is just kind of, it's the Duke all over. The Duke knew that the photographers and the media would have to be there because it was such an international event. People are interested in these things. And he kind of accommodated them. Some photographers in particular, the royals do get on with quite well, and Arthur Edwards does seem to be one of them. So that was kind of a nice touch for Arthur to be involved in that way, so close, and in kind of a funny way that the Duke would have enjoyed.
Russell, can we have a look at the Telegraph, back to the Sunday Telegraph, to change tack a little bit here, but looking at this whole Greensill situation?
Well, it's hard to believe that there has been any other news sort of raging on in the background because after the Duke of Edinburgh's death. But this is a huge story, and it's under the headline "Procession of ex-MPs to appear at line of duty lobbying inquiry." And just that reference to the popular programme Line of Duty that many millions of people are watching at the moment about corruption. It's a very, very interesting reference. Now, this is involving the Greensill Capital controversy, which is involving David Cameron and his alleged instances with lobbying. Could be very, very damaging for the government, for Cameron's legacy, once more. Apparently, he will obviously cooperate with the inquiry. But the very fact that 4 ex-MPs are being called to this inquiry, allegations about Cameron lobbying for an app used by the NHS that he had invested in, could be very, very damaging for all involved.
It could do it. There's an interesting line with all of this, though, isn't there, as to how much this cuts through to the public, I guess, because lobbying is a murky, strange Westminster bubble sort of thing. Do the rest of us really care about it?
Well, but whilst people may not understand the finer details of it, I think that once you've seen David Cameron making a speech, I think it was in 2010 perhaps, saying that lobbying was essentially the cancer that needed to be cut out of Westminster, that they were a completely different party from others that had come before them, and then he is now caught up in a very, very murky controversy, the one that he was lambasting. That's all you need to know. And certainly, while we may not be aware of the finer details of it, the very fact that he was messaging, texting, and colluding with other serving MPs allegedly is making it all the murkier. So it will be very, very interesting to see how this develops. And I think once we've moved on from the wall-to-wall coverage of the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral, this will become an absolutely huge and potentially sensational story.
When this evidence is given, everyone will be tuning in, I'm sure of that. Can we have a look at who's got this one on puppy smugglers in the Sunday People?
That's me.
Oh, right, go on, Russell. Oh, well, we'll have to squeeze a bit more in with you next hour, Victoria. Go on, puppy smugglers, Russell.
Well, let me just tell you about this, because this story, again, very expertly covered by the Sunday People today, and it tells the story of a tiny Shar-Pei puppy called Sean, saying that Sean was a Shar-Pei with too much pain to open his eyes. Now, I was covering these sorts of stories, a decade ago when I was a news reporter. And it seems as though that it talks about the lust for lockdown pets has fueled this evil trade. Now, puppy smuggling has been a big, big business for a long time, and there have been calls across the board, a number of animal welfare charities asking the government to take action. It's a multi-million pound industry, up to £500 million through this illegal trade. Romanian and Bulgarian gangsters profiteering off it incredibly. Calls for the government to ban the cash sale of puppies. It needs to be with registered breeders, but it seems as unfortunately these puppies that are suffering hugely because of all sorts of diseases and issues with their health are suffering while the government are not taking action. Yeah,
okay. Look, Russell, Victoria, thank you both. We'll see you in an hour. All the top stories in just a moment. Time to have a look through the papers once again with the Mirror's royal editor, Russell Myers, and the founder of the Crown Chronicles, Victoria Howard. Morning, both. To the Mail on Sunday, Russell, looking at one or two, as they call, fascinating cameos we may not have spotted at the funeral yesterday.
Yes, indeed. Well, this is quite an interesting take on funeral yesterday, because when you're faced with such an massive occasion of national importance and international attention, it's often quite difficult to spot the little instances which are very, very interesting. And they take a look at the flowers that were used, which were handpicked by the Queen, the soprano, who was absolutely incredible, who was drafted in because, of course, not only were the mourners limited to a number of 30, but of course the choir had to be limited as well. So there was only 4 singers in the choir that rang out throughout St George's Chapel. But the most interesting point was when the carriage that the Duke of Edinburgh used to ride around in Windsor Castle and District was actually used in the ceremony. And as a tribute, they placed his hat, his gloves and his whip in the carriage as it rode into Windsor Castle. And also the little box of sugar lumps that he used to feed the horses as well. So just a wonderful, wonderful tribute to a remarkable man.
Yes, because you won't have missed that if you were watching Sky News yesterday, with a wonderful, wonderful commentary for Alistair Bruce, who pointed out it was the sugar lump box. There's nothing he doesn't know, let me tell you. Sunday Express, Victoria, looking at William and Harry together.
Absolutely. I think many people were kind of anticipating that reunion of the brothers. Of course, they've not spoken face to face in over a year. So the Express kind of looks at it as Kate bringing them together. And this is more of an observation, but we saw the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and then the Duke of Sussex walking up back to the private apartments of Windsor. And it seems that Kate engages in some conversation with Harry, and then she leaves them and the brothers kind of talk alone. But it's so key, of course, the public way in which Harry and Meghan discussed ongoings within the royal family in that Oprah interview not all that long ago. And of course, such a sombre occasion being the first time they meet face to face. So many people on social media were talking about this, saying that, this is really positive. And I do think that, as for many families across the world, a death in the family is kind of a chance to reflect and maybe patch things up if they've not been too good in recent time. In recent times. So I do think that we're hopefully seeing some progress there. And I think the wider royal family is also invested in that being repaired as well.
Well, let's hope so, because, forget the royal side of it. They're a family and they're brothers, and it's always better if brothers can get along. To the Sunday Mirror, Russell, looking at, and the picture which has framed all of this is that one of the Queen in the choir on her own. And the Sunday Mirror looking at how, at the end of the day, she is a widow now.
Yes, of course. One of a number of striking images from yesterday, and it's also the main image on our front page today. The Queen cutting a very solitary figure on her own, not only because of the fact that her beloved husband of 73 years has left her, but also because of this service was ravaged by the coronavirus restrictions. And this is a fantastic piece by one of our senior writers, Rachel Bletchley, entitled "Behind the Invisible Armour of Duty, the Monarch was simply a grieving widow." And certainly there have been many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people around the world who've had to face similar circumstances. And certainly the Queen and the royal family were very keen to stand shoulder to shoulder with those people that have had to face this on their own. Certainly an extraordinary set of circumstances have led to this. And those images will live long in the memory, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, quite right. To the Sunday Telegraph, Victoria, what now for the Queen as a widow? How do we think it's going to change everyday life?
Well, of course, she's 95 this coming week, so I think we can definitely expect to see less of her, essentially. Of course, COVID still isn't over yet. But I think more than anything, we'll be seeing more of the younger royals, including Prince Charles, not so much on the young side, but just taking over more and more of those duties. Widowhood is something that obviously a lot of people are having to contend with in this last year because of the pandemic, and it's something that is a universal experience in grief. And one point in particular I saw on social media, which I thought was hugely poignant and interesting, was that this funeral actually gave the nation a chance to mourn and grieve together, not only for the Duke, but for those hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their lives in the pandemic, and for those people who weren't able to attend the funerals because of such restrictions. And I think that really resonated and will resonate with people across the UK.
I'm sure it will. As you said, very nearly 128,000 now, which is an awful lot of families affected. Look, can we finish off with Victoria looking at a bit of spelling, because it's the bane of a lot of people's lives, a bit of spelling, but are we going to have to focus more on it?
It seems that the rules might be shifting. So the Sunday Times report that there might be some new rules in the making to help simplify the English language. You see from the headline there, rules is spelt with 2 O's instead of ULES. And it's basically because English as a language takes up to 3 years longer to learn at primary school level than many other languages because of the irregularity of it. So they're hoping to move to this traditional spelling revised system, which will hopefully repair broken spelling. So we can expect to see, those silent letters and words like wrong and nash to be removed, and spelling hopefully simplified in terms of, as that example of rules there.
No, no. Victoria, this can't be right. This cannot be right, surely.
So language. So me personally, I'm a German speaker as well, which is why I find this so interesting. For many other languages, they kind of have councils and systems in place to regulate languages. English doesn't really have that, and it's just kind of a bit of a hodgepodge over the centuries of things crawling in. So the American English, for example, that had a simplification, which is why they dropped the U from things like colour and favourite. So this is super interesting. I kind of see it almost like potentially the change we had, that shift that
I'm so disturbed, Victoria. I'm going to have to stop you both right there. It's been good to see you this morning. Thank you.